Welcome into another edition of Mix in a Water Monday. Joining us today is former Gamecock defensive lineman Preston Thorne. You can also hear him on 107.5 The Game, weekdays from 9 to 12, The Extra Point. Preston, let's just get right into it. Talk about the defense, what we saw from South Carolina this past weekend against Arkansas. Where do you begin? Because a lot of people want to point to the defensive line. As a former defensive lineman, was it just lack of finishing? I mean, what are you seeing out there?
Well, first of all, Arkansas is a really strong running team. They can run the ball really well. They can run the ball with anybody in the country. So it's no fault in giving up a large number of rushing yards against a team like that. Everybody sort of expected that. It wasn't as if that was going to stop them from running the ball. However, I think there were at points in the game where you saw the defensive line, who is responsible for the run first and foremost, you saw them start to get pushed around a little bit. And I don't think that's what you want to see as a team. There's a difference between, them getting a couple yards here and there or them making some splash plays. But at some points, it seems as if the interior guys especially got beat up to be plain and simple about it.
Anything else about the defensive line that stood out to you in terms of things maybe you liked? It was good to see Jordan Strawn make an impact out there. We'll have to wait and see depending on when the news comes out on Strawn. I know we heard from Shane Beamer after the game saying that he would be evaluated back in Columbia as well as Mo Kaba. So, and for Cam Smith, that was an injury that he doesn't believe is too serious. But I say all that because Strawn did some good things. We saw Birch make some plays out there. Zach Pickens was all over the place. I'm not even talking about the secondary yet, but specifically about the defensive line, because people will look at, 295 yards allowed on the ground. Like you said, against a good Arkansas running team and a team that has good offensive linemen at that too, Preston. What did you like, though? Is there anything that you liked from USC that you can hold your hat, you can put your hat on heading into this Georgia week?
Yeah, it's not even if we're like scraping the barrel for compliments. I do think, with the exception of some plays going into the red zone, I do think they played pretty well in the middle of the field as far as maybe containing Rocket Sanders. Yes, they had a lot of yards. And again, it's one thing when you look at the whole numbers and you look at when the numbers were put up throughout the game. They did give themselves some chances to make plays. There was a point where it was a one-score game. They had a chance to make plays. So I didn't come out of the game feeling totally defeated on the defensive side. I do think they just ran up against a really strong team. And I think anything realistically expecting that team to rush for under 200 against anybody was probably not going to happen. Maybe when you get to the extra 250, you get a little bit sort of disappointed, but anything under 200 was not likely against that type of team.
R.J. Roderick out, the true freshman from Irmo. E.J. Emanwuri, he looked phenomenal. He didn't look like a true freshman out there. Double-digit tackles. Maybe some of those you were wishing they didn't get to that second, third level for him to make those tackles. But bottom line is when he needed to, he did. He came up, filled the alley a couple times from that safety position. What do you like about that young man?
Man, I'm going on record, and it's pretty much locked. If you play as a freshman, you kind of get nominated for all SEC freshmen. But the way he's playing, if he continues the trajectory, it's going to be he might be flirting with all SEC type of playing the way he's playing right now. And the word that came to my mind was an eraser. He made a couple of plays where there was nobody between him and a lot of green field, and he's made one-on-one tackles. He broke down, made tackles in space, and he kind of made some plays that had the potential to go for a lot longer. He made them disappear. So that was the first thing that came to my mind was this guy's an eraser. He's a difference maker back there in the secondary.
What do you do? What do you do now? If R.J. Roderick's healthy next week, do you roll with the freshman right now? I mean, you've been in those situations, right? And this is no disrespect against R.J. We're just using him for example. You have a coaching staff that didn't necessarily recruit R.J. And you have a coaching staff that recruited Nick. So sometimes that can play a factor into it, or an added factor into it. I think with what he did the other day, now granted, he's going to have his growing pains. We saw in the coverage just a tremendous wheel route by Arkansas. Those are the little things that will happen when you're a young player out there. A good learning experience. Do you go with the young gun this week, you feel like?
21
Nick is
has
healthy.
to,
I mean, if
21 has to
RJ's
be on the
healthy.
field. 21
Yep.
has to be on the field regardless. Figure out a place to do it, whether that might be he's big and strong enough. It might be moving him out to a Nickolish or the Will Backer if they really, really want to play RJ back at safety and maybe moving around some different people's positions. Regardless of how it has to happen, 21 to me right now is playing the best on defense out of everybody. And he needs to take as many snaps as possible regardless of where it is next week.
A 3-star from the state of South Carolina. I know another 3-star that Beamer had success with from the state of South Carolina a couple of years ago. I wonder who that could be. Also play that safety position. I want to mention the tackling because this is something that we've talked about the last couple of years, right? When you think back to when you played, if you had a game like this, what typically does that week look like for practice?
I just always remind everybody I played for Lou Holtz, and so we would go full pads Tuesday, Wednesday sometimes. A lot of teams may go full pads on Tuesdays, especially at this point in the season. We would go full pads Tuesday, Wednesday. Sometimes we would go shells on Thursday, not jerseys. Shells with thump, and with some tempo to it. And a lot of times, it might have felt like punishment as a player, but just like anybody, the more you rep, thud is never a substitute for live tackling. It's just not. And maybe not unfortunately, with the way the rules are designed now with preseason practice, with them not having as many padded practices, tackling is just going to be something that has to develop throughout the year. Hopefully your team is a little bit better at it than the other team, but I know we only watch South Carolina, so we're mainly focused on our tackling, but if you watch football throughout the rest of the day on Saturday, you can see it's something that's bad everywhere, and it's going to have to develop as the season goes along.
From an offensive standpoint, what did you like? Perry Orth was on the GC Live post-game show yesterday. And I don't know if you necessarily agree with it, we felt like there was improvements and you could see from the offense from week 1 to week 2. It looked like at times that they were more in sync. Maybe the first quarter, they were a little bit, little sluggish. Maybe they were sleepwalking a little bit. Does this mean the offense is fully there? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I just felt like it was a little bit more in sync. Do you believe that? And if so, why? And if not, what did you see out there?
What I like is we got a dude that can throw the rock, spin the pill, however the quarterbacks want to say it, man. And I would like to see us try to maybe adapt that type of personality to this offense. Not being an offensive guy, I didn't see as much, but I like to see an identity form around this offense and try and figure out exactly who and what they are and how they're going to be successful. The thing that stood out to me the most, I think Dan Orlowski mentioned it. When you watch Arkansas, it wasn't a secret as to what they were trying to do. They were a zone read, power read team, maybe play action that was going to try and throw the ball. It wasn't a secret. And because it's not a secret to anybody else, it's not a secret to their own players. Right now, as a Gamecock fan, just casual watcher, I'm not sure if you ever really know what our offense is going to attempt to do in any given game. I watched the Kentucky game last night. You know what they're going to do. They're going to line up an ace. They're going to do a lot of stretch, a lot of play action, and that's what they do. It just seems like this offense right now lacks a specific identity as far as how they're going to go about being successful.
Well, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back from a defensive mindset since you played defensive line. Especially early on, South Carolina felt like they abandoned the run game. I don't know what the specific game plan was. We know that Arkansas was banged up in the secondary, and we saw throughout the course of the game, South Carolina take some chances downfield. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they missed by just a little bit. I say all that just because when you do have a team that abandons the run the way that South Carolina did, and that's the way I'm phrasing it, when they abandon the run like that, how much easier does that make it as a defensive lineman, just knowing that you can put your hand on the ground and just tee off knowing it's going to be pass, pass, pass?
You just said it. All of a sudden, that the guesswork is out. You're not going. Everybody's going on silent count, so I know what the count is, and I know I can just basically it just basically turns into pass pro for the defensive line. And you know how it is when you're in any drills. It's just drill work because the guesswork is taken out of it, and you know, essentially, I have a one-on-one against this guard, or I have a one-on-one against this tackle, and I can try and work all of my pass rush moves because I don't have to worry about the run coming in behind it. We started with a little bit of the screen game that I thought was a nice wrinkle that we tried to throw in there to kind of slow some guys down and get them to slow up as far as the pass rush is concerned. But I think that's a great word that you use. We sort of abandoned a lot of those principles offensively that we were trying to control the pass rush with. Because if you can't control it with your players, you know there's some play calling things that you can do, whether that's screens, draws, delays, where you can sort of slow them down a little bit, and we abandon those things also.
Georgia moves up to number 1 in the latest AP poll, 26-point favorites as of Sunday. I'm not saying that it's impossible. We've seen South Carolina pull off some crazy upsets before. They did it down in Athens a couple years ago. Regardless of that, regardless of the actual win-loss result, what do you want to see this weekend from South Carolina? Because, look, if they do lose this game, by 3 touchdowns, wherever the case may be, you're going to hear people on the outside saying X, Y, Z. Even though when you look at the schedule ahead of them, there are some games that they can compete in. What do you want to be able to see so that they do have that confidence? Regardless, okay, you got Charlotte, SC State, we get that. Then you got the Kentuckys, then you got the A&Ms of the world, and Tennessee, and all that. What do you need to do this week to feel good about yourself from a conference standpoint?
That's a great question. And the obvious answer is win, but that might be out of the realm of real possibility. And so it's interesting when you approach this game as a player or a coach, because everybody kind of has a feeling for what this is. But I think for me, what I want to see is them execute a game plan that has some rhythm, that has some systemic options based on it. When you're watching the game, just as a casual fan, you can kind of figure out, okay, this is what they're trying to do. It may not work because Georgia has better athletes, whatever, but at least you can see or have an idea of what the team is trying to do. For me, that would be a resounding success, whether that is A, getting Marshawn Lloyd the ball 25 times, and I wouldn't care if he ran for 25 times for 50 yards. If we said, we're going to run the ball this week, and that's what we're going to do, I'd be fine with that. Or the flip side, if we just say, hey, Spencer, get back there and sling it. We're going to throw it 65 times, and we're going to let you win the game. I'd be fine with that too. But it just seems like I want to figure out what this team is going to be to make them successful.
As players, did you guys ever mention the spreads? Did Lou Holtz ever mention the spreads at all?
He did.
Big spread guy.
He would come in there. He would come in there. He would come in there, and he'd come. Matter of fact, thinking about Georgia, he would come in there and say, "Hey guys, we're 10-point underdogs," and we would start the week. He'd say, "And they're probably right. There's no reason why we shouldn't. We're 10-point underdogs. This is what we need to do to sort of erase that game." And the genius of Lou Holtz is that throughout the week, he'd come in on Tuesday and say, we're still 10-point underdogs. I don't think that Monday night was a good enough practice. Maybe by Wednesday, he comes in and says, you know what? The way we did X, Y, and Z, it might be 5-point underdogs. And then by the end of the week, he's holding a game plan up. He's saying, this game plan is going in the Hall of Fame. I'm telling you, if we do this, we have a chance. And lo and behold, he would say we had a chance. And so he would never sugarcoat whether he's like, okay, they might be more talented than us, but that's never stopped the team from winning or losing. Mm-hmm. And so, it's kind of crazy. He would actually talk about spreads often.
We'll find out if Shane Beamer does that. He's Preston Thorne. Listen to him weekdays between 9 and 12 on 107.5 The Game with Pearson Fowler on the Extra Point. Preston, appreciate you joining us today.
My man, appreciate you, brother.